Everything I've showed you today is all public information. You can have the public ballot images, which we provide in our press release, and we also have the audit results that are on the Secretary of State's website. We give you the links for that. You don't have to take our word for it. Anybody in the country can do their own analysis and come up with the same or different results than we did. But most importantly, I want you to understand that the elections officials, this includes the Secretary of State and Fulton County, they've had this information for 6 months. We just got it a couple months ago through our lobbying efforts on SB 202 to get make ballot images publicly available. And we also got the court order about that same time to release these. So, but everything is, I'm telling you, is public. Not one thing is specific to our case in terms of evidence, because we haven't even gotten to discovery yet. So I encourage you to check us out and really appreciate y'all being here. And David, I think, has some additional things that he would like to say. And we're going to need to take a quick stop break at 11 o'clock, I think. And then we'll come back and we will be here to answer all of your questions. So what time do we have right now?
10:57.
10:57. Okay, so we'll stop. So I think David's going to come forward and he wants to show. David has led this effort. I just want to say one last thing before we go. Again, we're putting these fact sheets out. This was a different one that I was talking about earlier, but this is one that came from our public broadcasting folks here in Atlanta. They've been saying that there's no evidence of fraud. That's not true. And they're misleading people in Georgia. There has been evidence of fraud for 6 months. We've had these sworn affidavits for 6 months. The evidence has been there. Now there's even more evidence, and there's even some proof of some fraud. So with that, I'm turning over to David, who's leading this effort. And David, thank you so much for everything you've been doing.
Pleasure. So you said we need to stop in like 2 minutes?
We can push out a couple minutes.
Okay. Take that back. Plug in right here. Okay, hi everyone. My name is David Cross. I'm a concerned citizen that reached out to Garland a few days after election day. We just concerns about irregularities that I'm seeing. I own a small business over in Duluth, Georgia, where I do investment management, and so really the crux of what I do for a living is investigate numbers. When clients come to me and say, is this company a good investment? Is that company a good investment? My job is to go in and look at the financials and find out if it's a sound company. And we frequently have found instances where we found fraud, and we've saved our clients millions of dollars by not investing in the companies that have that kind of fraud. So what I'm going to show you is very brief. I'll try to be to the point. If you want to, feel free to pull your chairs forward. What I'm showing on the screen right now, this is the actual risk limiting audit that the Secretary of State has posted on his website. Now, from here, this thing's got 44,000 or 42, I think 42 or 44,000 lines to it. It's every absentee by mail, every election day, every batch that was used in the risk limiting audit. When we go from there, we're able to isolate it and get it down to the point where we can see what we're able to compare what was reported in the risk limiting audit versus what were we given in terms of images. So I'm going to jump right to the easy things that should have been found with any kind of audit. So what you're looking at here is these three top entries each show 96 votes for Trump and 392 for Biden. And the very first line says absentee scanner 3, batches 174 through 178. When I go over and tally the images that correspond to those files or to the batch image files, it's pretty close, all right? So the risk limiting audit showed 491. We showed 495 ballots in there, and it's very close. What should have been caught was that scanner 3 batch 175 and 176 was also reported as 96 and 392. And then absentee scanner 3 batch 177 was reported with exactly the same result. And if you just want to look at apples to apples on batch 177, The Secretary of State said 96 and 392. What was actually in the batch was 9 and 89. That's easy stuff to find. Anybody could have sorted the spreadsheet and found that, but they didn't. This entire page is filled with more duplicates. And some of these are duplicates that have similar names. So the next one says absentee scanner 3 batch 1. And then the next line that's on here says scanner 3/1. Those numbers were reported as exactly the same on the risk limiting audit. Only one batch of files existed that says 43 and 55. Again, absentee scanner 3, batch 18, looks the same as scanner 3/18. This goes on down the page. I mean, it's an unbelievable amount of matches that happen on there that should have been easily identified by anybody just doing a basic audit to look for duplicate entries. It's a simple function to put into Excel. If this number matches that number, and this other number matches the one above it, it should be very simple to find.
David, were all of these examples were the numbers that were presented that were adjusted always done in favor of Biden?
We had a few that were in favor of Trump, but the vast majority was Biden. So these are ones where we have exact numbers. 21 and 77 is reported twice. 8 and 90 gets reported twice, and there's only one batch that verifies what actually exists.
So what would cause them to get counted twice? Would that be a deliberate thing, or is this sort of what?
I have no idea. I mean, but I do know that if the Secretary of State says, we counted them 3 times, they should be able to find this. This is not difficult.
Who were the incompetents that conducted the audit?
Yeah, I don't know.
Which group was it? From the Secretary of State's office? Was it an outside group?
I think it was the Secretary of State's office, but Garland's more familiar with that. I'm just the numbers guy.
Yeah, you want me to answer now or wait?
No, go ahead.
All right, so, I think you're asking how the audit was.
I asked who are the incompetents who conducted the audit for the Secretary of State?
Okay, so the way that it worked is Fulton County had an audit on November 14th, 15th with their own people. And the audit was entered into the Secretary of State's system, as I explained before. And this report was generated from the Secretary of State.
So Fulton County audited itself.
Yeah, pretty much it.
So Fulton, the answer to your question is, it was Fulton County, and assuming that the Secretary of State's reporting mechanism right. This is the problem with the broken chain of custody. Fulton County, when you conduct an audit, Fulton County should have their own results. So when they push it up, then we know, we can verify that, okay, it was Fulton County did it wrong. Now that the chain of custody was broken and it went to the Secretary of State's office and the Secretary of State reported Fulton County's number, you don't really know.
So they pushed up falsified information and covered their tracks, basically.
I'm sorry.
They pushed up falsified information to the Secretary of State and covered their tracks by letting it out.
It appears that way. We don't want to be accusatory
Sure,
yet,
but
it
the reality
appears.
is there's no tracks leading back to them. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, no, there are tracks. I mean, this data, the tally sheets were done by Fulton County. The tally sheets that David is talking about, they were done by Fulton County. They were then entered by Fulton County. But when they entered it into the Secretary of State system, and that's what broke the chain of custody. They should have entered it into
They don't
Fulton
have their
County
own
system,
system, in other words.
and yeah, and then uploaded it.
Well, what's interesting is that this audit happened after the Carter Jones report, right? Where the investigator that the Secretary of State actually hired to look at how Fulton County ran the election, and he described it as chaos in his report. They then allowed the same chaotic environment to literally conduct the audit, which is sort of like a negligence on the part of the Secretary of State, right? Because you're.
Well, yeah, so
The answer's obvious.
we're just giving you the data.
Yeah,
We're trying not to draw too many accusatory
Yeah, but-
conclusions off of it.
Were there any observers from the parties of this audit that Fulton County conducted? Or was it just Fulton County employees
No,
or
okay,
contractors?
yes, all right, so there were observers, I was an observer, I was an audit monitor, the Carter Center was there, and they thought the audit was wonderful. You just saw this report. They made a 30-page report telling you how great the audit was. It's
But
completely.
they also did the audit of Venezuelan,
Thank you.
Venezuelan elections, and they found it wonderful too.
Right.
That's why we have elected
Don't
Venezuela.
even
and
mention, don't
Cuba.
even mention Jimmy Carter. So I have another question for you. Tell me what you found in Arizona and how that, what you saw in Arizona, how that compares to what went on in
That's
Georgia.
that's outside the scope. That's outside the scope. We need to
Let
stay
me
with
come
David.
back to this.
Mark,
and stay
Mark
on.
had one question. He's been patiently waiting.
Thank you. When we look at mismatches in audit results compared to machine counted results, is it possible that Fulton County, when doing the audit, just mixed the batches together, and rather than keeping them organized, how possible is it that this is sloppy records management rather than intentional mismatches?
It's certainly errors. There are certainly errors, but the tally sheets I showed you are falsified. That's fraud, in my opinion.
How do you know it's fraud rather than sloppiness?
Well, how would you make a sloppiness and you write up 7 batches, 100 to nothing Biden, 200 to nothing Biden?
I
Go ahead
mean,
and show
well,
them.
we know in the
How-
audit, they sorted ballots sometimes by candidate.
There
Isn't
are
it
no,
possible that they did that kind of sorting?
It's,
and that's
it's,
what we're
it's
saying?
possible, Mark, but the
Right.
reality is that somebody wrote down 100 on there and then didn't bother to reconcile what they were turning in. I mean, was it fraud? I don't know. But here's the thing. When we go back and take a look, Garland was talking about the 60% error rate. What he's talking about here was I did a simple question in Excel. I said, does the Trump number here from the risk limiting audit match the Trump number that was in the ballot file? Does the Biden number from the risk limiting audit match the images? And does the total number of votes match? That's it. And there's a 59.5% failure rate. So right at 60, I mean, rounded up 60% failure rate if you're just doing that test. So if human beings are doing this kind of thing on a risk limiting audit, I expect 5%, not 59.5%.
So 2 questions. One question is, on these tally sheets, is there somebody that initials or signs so that you can trace back who is physically doing it?
There is, but it's been redacted, so we don't know.
So the Secretary of State would have access to
Yes,
that
yes,
then?
they
Okay, and then second question
and the
is,
county.
okay, and second question is with these duplicate batches, are there more than one sheet that just reflects the same number? Do you
So
know what I
more
mean?
than one sheet? No, we haven't found more than one tally sheet.
So there's just extra votes somehow being counted, but no tally sheet to,
Actually, I stand corrected. Well, I remember finding a couple of tally sheets that
for the same batch?
for the same
Like
batch.
multiple tally sheets for the same batch?
2 at most is what I found.
Okay.
But the problem is that the tally sheets were given us to us in 4 files
Mhm.
that had 3,000 things jumbled in there. There was no order. It was all chaos. So you literally had to hunt and peck through this thing. I've spent hundreds of hours trying to figure this thing
And
out.
now is the numbers enough? Like, do you know, like, when you calculate all the numbers of the errors, is there a big enough difference to where the election could have went the other way?
I don't know.
You don't know.
All right, so here's the thing. So if I owe you $20,000, right,
Mhm.
and I pull a wad of cash out of my pocket and say, as soon as I give this to you, it's yours, and I certify that it's $20,000, all right?
Mhm.
And you look at it and you say, well, it looks like $20,000, but you don't know that it's it's movie money, right? And the first couple hundred are first couple hundreds are real, and the rest of it's garbage. I think that what we've got is garbage. So let's come back to this. I just showed you identical duplicates. Now what we've got is mislabeled and duplicate counted, right? So here's an example, just a simple, easy one. Oops, my slide's too big. I have to shrink it down a little bit. Just have to do this. Okay, so here's one where we have in red says scanner 5 back 17. It says 17 for Trump, 17 for, 7 for Trump, 17 for Biden, right? And what we found out was that this batch above has got number 17 in it because it says 15 through 20, 21, and 22. I'll widen this up a little bit so maybe you can see more. Another one of these down here, absentee scanner 5 back 67, 2 for Trump, 94 for Biden. What was actually in there was 18 and 77, and it was part of this group of 55, number 67, number 71, and number 75. It was already reported as 74 and 217. The numbers we came up with was 97 and 277. This thing is a mess.
Can you even trust the 97 and the 277 originally reported?
Over here, as far as the ballot images go, I mean, I have to because those are the ballot images that were given to me. Unless I find that there are duplicates.
So this is just about the counting of the ballots. This is not about the integrity of the ballots themselves.
Not yet. We'll get to that in just a minute. Here's another one where you have similar naming nomenclature. Scanner 1/97 is the same as scanner 1-97. They both got counted for the risk limiting audit. Only one of them is correct, and the correct numbers were 41 and 55, not 43 and 45.
You need the originally reported numbers, not necessarily.
This is the ballot images. This is the risk limiting audit. I don't know what the originally reported numbers were, but some of our critics will sometimes say, that, well, the numbers were so close, how could it be off? And the reality is I don't know, but I can tell you that the election night numbers, very close to the recount, very close to the risk limiting audit numbers. So there has to be something that's going on. Let's see, we'll go a little further down here.
Right. On that point, I mean, go. Can I?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, since the numbers are close in the aggregate, I think some people would say that lends credence to the idea that the audit was close to the actual official results. Why is that not true?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Okay, so Mark, there's a false assumption in your question, and that is that the original results were accurate. And that's what I believe to be a false assumption.
Exactly.
So let me explain why. As you know, we accumulate votes that are in QR codes that the voter never verified. That system was ruled illegal by the U.S. District Court. It was ruled as in violation of Georgia law. Now, she hasn't provided relief for that yet, but that's in page 81 of the October ruling from Judge Totenberg, that this system violates Georgia law. They're wedded to it now. Over 100 million, we're probably approaching $200 million. So until we can actually look at it and see if that Dominion system actually counted votes correctly, we don't know that the first results are correct. And now we don't know that the audit proved anything. So we've got multiple problems. When they recounted it for the third time, all they did was accumulate the votes, the unverifiable votes, and republish the previous unverifiable votes. We have not had a legitimate count of the votes in the Georgia elections yet, in November or in January. So, and we do have evidence that the Dominion machines flip votes in Ware County. I'll stick by that. I have a sworn affidavit on it. People are saying that didn't happen. Nobody has ever refuted my sworn affidavit on that. Yes, ma'am.
What is the process from here on? Is it taken to a court, or any other? Who can look into this? It doesn't seem like anybody from either party is interested in exposing this.
The legislature.
The legislature's got to have the guts to stand up and say, you know what, we've got to do this, right?
But it looks like the people in the legislature are very quiet about this.
Well, the average politician's scared. They just want to get elected again. They don't want to upset the vote. So they're just trying to get reelected. Let me show you some more because it gets worse. All right. we looked at the number of times that in the risk limited audit that Trump got more than 94% of the vote, which is statistically improbable, right? It happened 4 times. When we look at the number of times that Biden got over 94% of the vote, it happened 200 times, 210 times to be exact. Not statistically probable. And even though that doesn't say there was fraud, it says that there's irregularities that need to be looked into.
How does that compare to the 2016 presidential election?
I don't know. All I've been doing is spending all my time on this particular one. What I'm going to show you now, and I've got two more slides, so this is one of the more important ones. This just shows you kind of like what we did to go through and verify things. You've got a tally sheet for scanner 2 batch 20 that says Biden got 100, nothing else written on here. Then what we've got is down at the bottom, we have the risk limiting audit that shows 0 and 100. And then we actually went through and pulled up what the actual ballot images said. We did this for every single one of the entries on that spreadsheet because we want to proof our work.
This is the 4,000 or whatever it was entries on that spreadsheet.
Yes. All right. And then over the weekend, we started finding duplicate scanned ballots. Now, Gabriel Sterling on June 18th on Twitter says, it's not possible. It didn't happen. And he's tired of answering the questions about it. What I'm going to show you here is 2 ballots side by side. One of them is marked for Jason Shaw, and it's got a little squiggle mark next to it. You can see it's got the identical mark on the second one. And the ballot image is stored up here on the top left. So this one over here is scanner 5162, that's scanner number 3, batch number 235, image number 19. And that matches 234, image 59. So you have the same ballot counted twice in the images and counted in the audit. How that's possible, I don't know. But what it says is that we need a full-blown audit because you need to remember what we're finding here is a tiny little bit of information inside of the absentee by mail ballots, which is only a fraction of all of Fulton County, and Fulton County is a part of Georgia. So we're zeroing in on a tiny, tiny microcosm, and this is what we're finding. I would imagine if we're finding this in Fulton County, we're probably going to find it throughout the state. And the question is, why did it happen? Why did the Secretary of State indebt Georgians to $208 million for a system that can't even count dollar bills the way that your bank can count dollar bills? I mean, if you go to your bank and you hand them $2,000 in hundreds, the teller's going to put it through a machine that's going to count it exactly, and it's going to spit out counterfeits. And that machine costs $300. And we spent $208 million on this. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
So those are 2 separate ballots right there, ballot images rather?
Yep, if you want to, you can get up closer, or I'll send them to you. It's 5162 is the batch number. Batch 234, image 59. 5162, batch 235, the very next one sequentially, which it should have been caught, image number 19.
And were there like several that seemed copied? Or
The whole batch.
the whole batch looked exactly like these 2?
Here's the next one.
So how were the marks made on the ballot? Was it made with a?
It was a mail-in, so somebody just, they filled in the.
So it's handed.
Yeah. So here's one of the next ones. All right, so same batch number 234, image number 2, and 235, image number 61. Republican, 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 all the way down to the point where this little spot up in Fannie Willis matches this one over here. There's no question that ballot was counted twice.
Adjudication is not reflected in this, right?
No.
Okay, so that's a whole other area to be looked into.
Here's another one. Again, 234, image number 80. 235, image number 42. Bubba McDonald's matches perfectly.
Karen Handel,
Matches perfectly. The entire batch does this.
Were there multiple batches like that?
There's another batch that is gonna be on, that'll be featured on Tucker Carlson tomorrow night. Here's another. 234, image 64, 235, image 26. The top of the Robert Bryant.
of the duplicates that you found, so far, all that you've shown us except one is for it's from a Democrat, so one for Republican, on the previous ballot you showed. How does that compare into what you found overall in the duplicates?